Ladies and gentlemen, champions, listen to me closely, because what I'm about to tell you might be the only thing standing between the life you have and the life you want. Let me start by asking you something. Who's been brainwashing you? Because somebody has. It might be society. It might be your environment. It might be your own past failures. You've been told you're not good enough, not smart enough, not fast enough, not lucky enough, and guess what? You believed it. You've been brainwashed to believe in limitations. Now it's time to brainwash yourself for domination. You've got to flip the script, rewrite the code, reprogram your mind. Because here's the truth. The most powerful force in the world is a made-up mind. When you fully decide that you are done playing small, done settling, done letting fear dictate your pace, that's when you become unstoppable. You want success? Stop waiting for motivation and start moving with discipline. You want freedom? Stop blaming your circumstances and start building your mindset. You see, success isn't about talent, it's about transformation. Transformation happens when you feed your mind truth on repeat until your old story dies and a new you is born. Reprogram your mind to reject limitations. From the moment we're born, we're conditioned. Conditioned by our environment, our schools, our families, and society at large. Before you even knew who you were, people were already telling you who you couldn't be. That's too hard. People like us don't get that far. Be realistic. Those words weren't just phrases, they were seeds. Seeds planted in your subconscious, watered by repetition, and rooted in fear. And without realizing it, you started building your life inside the walls of those limitations. But here's the truth. Limitations are not real until you believe in them. They are mental constructs, invisible fences placed around your potential by people who gave up on theirs. Reprogramming your mind isn't just about thinking positively, it's about tearing down every belief that doesn't serve your purpose. It's about becoming aware of the lies you've accepted as facts. When you were told you weren't good enough, that wasn't truth. It was a projection. When you were made to believe success was for other people, that wasn't wisdom, it was defeat wrapped in advice. The first step in reprogramming is recognizing that you've been programmed in the first place. Look at your thoughts. Analyze your internal dialogue. What do you say to yourself when nobody's watching? If your mind is a computer, some of you have been running outdated software from years ago. It's time to uninstall that. You weren't born with fear. You weren't born thinking small. That was taught to you. You learned to doubt yourself. You learned to settle. And anything learned can be unlearned. But that doesn't happen passively. It takes intention. It takes daily work. You have to become the gatekeeper of your mind. Be ruthless about what you allow in. That means cutting off negative input, news, toxic conversations, limiting beliefs disguised as reality checks. If it's not feeding your vision, it's feeding your fear. And fear is the factory of limitation. If you want to eliminate fear, flood your mind with faith. You must override those old patterns with new programming. Speak new language into your life. Tell yourself what's possible, not what's probable. Speak from vision, not from memory. Your subconscious mind doesn't care if what you're saying is true or false. It just accepts what's repeated. That's why affirmations matter. That's why environment matters. That's why what you feed yourself mentally is more important than what you feed yourself physically. If all you consume is doubt, fear, and failure, don't be surprised when you live small. But when you saturate your mind with vision, courage, and belief, you start to grow beyond your past. You start to think bigger, move different, show up different, and don't wait for permission to start. Nobody's going to come rewrite your script for you. You have to get in the editing room of your own life and hit delete on the things that no longer serve you. Delete the self-doubt, delete the excuses, delete the I'm not ready, because here's the reality. You were never meant to be limited. You were designed to expand. You were created to grow. And any thought that contradicts that is a lie. Your greatest enemy isn't out there, it's in your own mind. And the only way to defeat it is by taking control of the narrative. You must deliberately choose new beliefs, ones that push you forward, not pull you back, ones that align with your goals, not your fears. It won't happen overnight, but it will happen with consistency. Repetition rewires. What you repeat, you become. And when you consistently repeat the belief that you are capable, worthy, powerful, and called, something unlocks. You start to walk in a different kind of energy. You stop playing by the old rules, because now you're no longer controlled by the limitations that were handed to you. You're led by the purpose that was placed in you. Identity drives behavior. Be who you want to become. The most powerful shift in a person's life doesn't happen when they change their habits. It happens when they change their identity. People try to upgrade their actions while keeping the same outdated version of themselves alive. They try to hustle like a champion while thinking like a failure. That never works, because actions are just the byproduct of who you believe you are. You will always act in alignment with the identity you accept as truth. That's why when someone calls themselves lazy, they act lazy. When someone sees themselves as undisciplined, they behave that way. Not because they can't change, because they've accepted an identity that doesn't serve them. The identity you hold shapes your standards, your decisions, your consistency, and even your ability to bounce back from setbacks. If you want lasting change, you must stop trying to do different things and start becoming a different version of you. That doesn't mean pretending. It means aligning your mindset with the future version of you that already exists in potential. Ask yourself, if I already was that version of myself, the one who wins, the one who leads, the one who lives with purpose, how would I think? How would I walk into a room? What would I tolerate? What would I let go of? When your identity shifts, your environment starts responding differently to you. You no longer negotiate with mediocrity. You no longer look for comfort. You start aligning your decisions with a higher standard. That's why people who succeed over the long term don't just build routines, they build identities. They become the kind of person who does the thing consistently. A healthy person doesn't have to fight every day to eat clean. They see themselves as someone who honors their body. A high performer doesn't force motivation daily. They see themselves as someone who shows up and gets it done, regardless of how they feel. The behavior is automatic because the identity is solid. So, if you want to build discipline, stop saying, I'm trying to be more disciplined. That statement alone keeps the old you alive. Say instead, I am disciplined. I am consistent. I am the kind of person who finishes what I start. Say it until it becomes the new foundation of your reality. Identity doesn't change because of external circumstances. It changes through internal decisions. You decide who you are, and then you prove it to yourself daily with action. Identity is not built on perfection. It's built on repetition. Start small, stack wins. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you reinforce the new identity. Every time you show up when it's hard, you cast a vote for the future version of you. Those votes stack, they compound. And before long, you don't even recognize the old version of you anymore, not because you erased your past, but because you built something stronger, something more aligned with where you're going. Stop waiting for evidence to believe you're worthy of that identity. The evidence comes after the belief. Believe it first. Act like it's already true. Let the world adjust. Because identity isn't given, it's chosen. You're not stuck where you are because of lack of opportunity. You're stuck because you keep identifying with a version of yourself that's no longer serving your vision. Every behavior you want to shift begins with a deeper identity upgrade. Your results are just mirrors reflecting who you believe you are. Want different results? Start seeing yourself differently. Speak the new identity, move in alignment with it, make decisions from it, and the rest will follow, not because you forced change, but because you finally became the version of you who no longer needed to try. You just are. Speak truth to yourself daily until it becomes your reality. What you say to yourself matters more than anything anyone else can ever say to you. Your internal dialogue is the architect of your future. If your words are small, your life becomes small. If your words are filled with doubt, fear, and hesitation, your actions will mirror that. But if you decide to speak truth, not the truth of your circumstances, but the truth of your potential, you start to rewire your destiny. Most people live reacting to their environment, repeating what they see and calling it real, but winners, leaders, the unstoppable, they speak what they want to see until their world has no choice but to catch up. Words create patterns. Repetition creates belief. When you speak something often enough, your brain begins to filter reality through that lens. That's not mindset fluff, that's neuroscience. The reticular activating system in your brain is constantly scanning for evidence to support what you've told it is true. So if you say, I'm not good at this, guess what? Your mind will look for every piece of data to validate that belief. But if you say, I always find a way, I rise under pressure, I'm built for this, your brain shifts its filter. Now it starts collecting proof that you're capable, that you're strong, that you always overcome. You don't need to fake positivity. You need to speak purpose. There's a difference. Positivity is surface level, saying nice things to feel better. Purpose-driven speech is deeper. It's when you align your words with who you are becoming. You speak from vision, not from emotion. That means even when the day hits hard, even when the results aren't there, you still speak strength. You still speak forward. That's not delusion. That's leadership over yourself. Too many people wait to feel confident before they speak like a winner. But confidence isn't a prerequisite, it's a result. You speak the truth of your potential first, and the confidence catches up. Stop saying things like, I hope I can, or maybe I will. Hope is weak when it's not backed by conviction. Replace it with, I will. I'm doing this. It's already mine. Those aren't just words. They are declaration. And every declaration moves you closer to alignment with your highest self. Think about how many years you've spent unintentionally reinforcing false beliefs with your words. I'm not a morning person. I'm bad with money. I can't stay consistent. You've said it so often it became your truth, but it was never the real truth. It was just a story. And the most dangerous stories are the ones we tell ourselves. That's why from this moment forward, you've got to become intentional with your language. Don't just let your mouth run on autopilot. Direct your speech like a weapon. Use it to build, not break. Use it to reinforce identity, not insecurity. Make it a practice. Every morning, speak over your day. Set the tone before the world has a chance to influence you. Speak strength into your weaknesses. Speak vision into your future. Don't wait until you feel ready. Say it until it becomes who you are. I am focused. I am disciplined. I am a finisher. Even if you don't fully believe it yet, speak it anyway, because belief doesn't come first, repetition does. What you hear most often, especially from yourself, becomes the truth you live by. You will never outperform your own language. You can have all the talent, all the potential, but if your words betray you, your life will too. So take back control of your mouth. Let your voice be your weapon. Let it cut through fear, through doubt, through all the noise around you. Speak truth to yourself until it no longer feels like a stretch, until it becomes normal, expected, part of your identity. Speak it so often that your subconscious has no choice but to submit. Speak it until your environment shifts to match your energy. Speak it until the people around you start adjusting to your new standard. Speak it until there is no gap between who you say you are and how you show up. Your environment is either reinforcing your power or poisoning it. Every single day you are being shaped, not just by your choices, but by the space you live in, the people you interact with, the media you consume, and the conversations you entertain. Your environment isn't neutral. It is constantly reinforcing a version of you, either the empowered, disciplined, purpose-driven you, or the distracted, doubtful, stagnant version that plays small. The mistake most people make is thinking they can rise while staying in environments that keep pulling them down. You can't plant a seed in concrete and expect it to grow like it's in rich soil. The right environment doesn't just support your growth, it accelerates it. If you spend time around people who normalize mediocrity, guess what becomes normal for you? If you surround yourself with conversations full of gossip, complaining, and low standards, your thinking will eventually reflect that energy. Your actions will start to dim to match the tone of your surroundings. But when you step into an environment where excellence is expected, where discipline is the default, and where dreams are discussed like plans, your standard rises without even trying. You absorb energy, you absorb momentum, and sometimes it's not about forcing more willpower, it's about creating an environment where the best version of you becomes the natural response. Energy is contagious. If you're constantly around people who see obstacles instead of opportunities, who back off when pressure hits, who talk more than they execute, you will start to normalize that mentality even if you don't agree with it. Because your brain is always adapting to fit in. But the moment you change your environment, everything shifts. You start hearing different language. You see people celebrating progress, not just talking about potential. You feel inspired by the presence of hunger. You find yourself stretched in ways that demand more from you, and that's a good thing. Growth doesn't happen in comfort. Growth happens where pressure exists, where standards are raised, where accountability is constant. Sometimes upgrading your life isn't about adding more things, it's about subtracting the noise, subtracting the distractions, subtracting the people who say they support you but secretly hope you don't outgrow them. Protect your space like it's sacred, because it is. Your space is either fueling your future or feeding your fears. You have to become ruthless with what you allow in. That means checking your digital environment too. What you scroll, what you listen to, what you watch, all of it becomes mental nutrition. You wouldn't put trash in your gas tank and expect your car to run. Why do that to your mind? You've got to create an environment that speaks to your future, not your past. That means being around people who talk goals, not gossip. That means choosing spaces that challenge your thinking instead of validating your limitations. That means keeping your physical space clean, organized, intentional, because cluttered environments lead to cluttered minds. Excellence begins with atmosphere, and you are the architect. You don't have to accept what's around you as permanent. You can shift it, you can build it, you can shape an environment that pulls greatness out of you, whether you feel like showing up or not. Start with small changes. Change the playlist, change the podcast, change what's on your wall, change who you call when things go wrong. Watch how those little environmental cues begin to produce massive internal shifts. You'll find yourself thinking clearer, acting faster, doubting less, moving with intention. Because when your environment aligns with your goals, resistance drops. Execution becomes smoother, focus becomes easier. It's not magic, it's alignment. Alignment between who you want to be and where you allow yourself to exist. There is no success without intentional surroundings. You cannot out-discipline a toxic environment. You cannot outwork a space that constantly feeds your fears, but you can choose to build differently. You can step back and say, this space doesn't serve where I'm going, and adjust accordingly. It might mean leaving certain circles. It might mean isolating for a season. It might mean disrupting comfort. But the cost of staying in the wrong environment is always higher than the cost of change. Emotion is fuel. Learn to direct it, not suppress it. Most people misunderstand emotion. They treat it as something to avoid, something that clouds judgment or weakens resolve. But emotion isn't the problem. Mismanaged emotion is. Emotion is energy, raw and powerful. It can drive you to greatness or drag you into self-sabotage, depending on how you channel it. The key is not to suppress how you feel, but to lead it. Emotion is like fire. It can burn your house down, or it can heat your home. It all depends on how you use it. Every great achievement is rooted in deep emotion. When someone becomes unstoppable, it's not just because they have a plan, it's because they have fire. They've taken pain, anger, frustration, love, and turned it into motion. That's what emotion is. Energy in motion. And the moment you understand that, you stop running from your feelings and start using them as tools. When disappointment shows up, you let it fuel your focus. When frustration builds, you convert it into discipline. When desire rises, you let it drive consistency. Emotion isn't weakness. It's the spark that ignites transformation when directed with intention. The problem is most people let emotion lead them instead of leading it. They feel discouraged and stop. They feel overwhelmed and quit. They feel insecure and play small. But those who win at the highest levels have mastered the art of emotional leadership. They don't ignore how they feel, but they refuse to let emotion make their decisions. They've trained themselves to ask, what can I do with this energy? Instead of reacting, they redirect. Instead of drowning in it, they stand on it. That's the shift from emotional reactivity to emotional mastery. You can't wait until you feel good to act. You have to act in spite of how you feel and let your actions dictate your emotions. Action precedes emotion more often than emotion precedes action. You don't get motivated first. You move, and motivation follows. That's why discipline is so powerful. It teaches your emotions who's in charge. It tells your fear, you don't get a vote today. It tells your doubt, you're not driving this time. The more you lead with action, the more your emotions begin to align with your direction instead of derailing your path. Some people carry emotional wounds that have never been processed, and they wonder why they can't stay consistent. That's because unresolved emotions don't go away. They hide, and they hijack your momentum when pressure rises. You've got to face them, not to wallow in them, but to harness them. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. Healing means converting pain into power. It means using what tried to break you as the very reason you break through. Every setback, every heartbreak, every betrayal, it's all energy. And you decide whether it becomes your prison or your platform. High performers understand that emotion is a message, not a master. It's information, not instruction. It tells you what matters, what you care about, what needs to shift, but it doesn't tell you what to do. You tell it what to do. You use it to craft your vision, fuel your grind, deepen your why. When you feel tired, it reminds you that rest is okay, but quitting is not. When you feel afraid, it reminds you that growth lives outside your comfort zone. When you feel angry, it reminds you that there's something inside you worth protecting and elevating. That's the power of direction, not suppression. So many people try to numb their emotions instead of navigating them. They avoid discomfort, and in doing so, they avoid greatness. But the breakthrough lies inside the emotion you're trying to bury. You have to be willing to feel it fully without letting it paralyze your purpose. You don't rise by pretending the fire isn't there. You rise by pointing that fire in the right direction and letting it drive you forward with purpose and precision. Emotion was never the enemy. It was the engine. You just needed to take the wheel. Beliefs must be built daily, not borrowed occasionally. Belief is the foundation of every action, every dream, every move forward. Without belief, discipline becomes mechanical and vision becomes foggy. But the kind of belief that makes you unstoppable isn't something you get handed once and then coast on for the rest of your life. It's not borrowed from a podcast, inherited from a mentor, or temporarily boosted by a motivational quote. It's something you construct brick by brick every single day. You wake up and make the decision. I believe in who I'm becoming. I believe in what I'm building. I believe even when the evidence hasn't caught up yet. The mistake too many people make is thinking belief is supposed to be automatic. That once you decide on your goal, your mind will just back you up with relentless confidence. But real belief doesn't show up uninvited. It shows up because you created the conditions for it. Just like building muscle, building belief requires consistent reps, mental reps, emotional reps, showing up even when you're doubting, taking action even when you're unsure, speaking life into your vision even when no one's clapping for it yet. You train belief like a skill, because it is one. When you borrow belief, when you rely on others to pump you up or pull you forward, you'll always be chasing the next source of confidence. But when you build belief from the inside, you become self-cornered. Your confidence becomes independent. You don't have to wait for someone to validate your path because your internal conviction becomes louder than any external opinion. You stop asking for permission and start moving with purpose, and that shift, that's where momentum lives. Momentum doesn't start with talent. It starts with belief that refuses to sit still. But belief doesn't mean pretending everything's perfect. It doesn't mean ignoring reality. It means looking reality in the face and still choosing to rise. It means seeing the obstacles and still deciding to push forward. It's not naive, it's relentless. It's not blind, it's It doesn't say, it'll be easy. It says, I'm committed even when it's not. That's the kind of belief that builds empires. That's the kind of belief that turns goals into lifestyles and discipline into identity. And every day that you show up when it would have been easier to shrink back, you're stacking evidence in your own favor. You're proving to yourself that you're dependable, that you're resilient, that your word to yourself actually means something. That's what deepens belief. Not hype, but history. The history of your own consistency. The memory of how many times you've kept going when quitting would have been the logical choice. That's what makes you unshakable. Not that everything goes right, but that your belief doesn't collapse when things go wrong. When you understand that belief is built, you stop waiting for it. You stop saying, I need to believe more before I act. And you start saying, I need to act so I can believe more. Because every action reinforces identity, and identity is where belief lives. You want to believe you're a leader? Then lead today. You want to believe you're disciplined? Then be disciplined for the next hour. You want to believe you're chosen for more? Then act like it now. The mind doesn't argue with proof. And proof comes from execution, not intention. That's why it's a daily process. Because every day you'll be tempted to forget who you are and what you're capable of. You'll face doubt, comparison, setbacks, and noise. And that's when the habit of belief matters most. That's when the internal dialogue you've been practicing becomes your defense against the pull of average. It's not enough to have believed once. You've got to believe again today and tomorrow and the day after that. Because belief that is built daily becomes a force that can't be shaken by circumstances or slowed by opinions. It becomes a standard, a way of life, a non-negotiable. Discipline is the bridge between your intention and your transformation. Intention is important, but it's not enough. Wanting to change doesn't change you. Hoping for success doesn't bring it. Wishing for growth doesn't create it. Everyone has desires, dreams, and goals. But what separates those who achieve from those who remain stuck is one thing: discipline. Discipline is what transforms a vague wish into a concrete reality. It's the daily commitment to show up, take action, and execute no matter how you feel. It's the quiet grind behind the scenes when no one is watching that creates the loudest impact in your life. Discipline is not about being perfect, it's about being consistent. It's not about waiting for the right time, it's about acting in the moment you're in. And the truth is, most people know what to do. They know what habits they need. They know what actions would change their life, but the gap between knowing and doing is where most dreams die. Discipline is what builds the bridge over that gap. It says, even if I'm tired, even if I'm uncertain, even if I'm scared, I still move. Because motion creates clarity and discipline keeps that motion alive. You can't depend on motivation. Motivation is fleeting. Some days it's high, other days it's gone. Discipline doesn't care if you're motivated. Discipline says we do it anyway. It removes the emotional decision-making and replaces it with the standard. And that standard becomes your anchor. It becomes the structure that holds your future together when everything else feels shaky. The moment you build a disciplined structure into your life, you begin to shape your destiny, not just wish for it. Discipline isn't a punishment. It's a pathway. It's not about restriction. It's about freedom. The freedom to live a life most people can't because you're doing what most people won't. When you practice discipline, you are saying to the world and to yourself that your vision is not negotiable, that you're not ruled by how you feel, that you don't need external validation to move forward, that your standard is set from within and nothing outside of you can lower it. Most people are disciplined in their distractions. They consistently make time for things that steal their energy, drain their focus, and delay their future. They're committed to habits that are costing them more than they realize. But the same energy it takes to stay stuck is the energy it takes to break through, just directed differently. Discipline is about redirecting your focus from what's easy to what's necessary, from what's comfortable to what's transformative. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you build self-trust. And that trust is what gives you confidence, not hype, not other people's praise, but the quiet internal knowing that you will follow through. Discipline is what gives you that knowing. It's the source of real confidence, not the fake kind that looks strong until resistance shows up. Real confidence is forged in the fire of consistency, and discipline is the fire. You want change? Don't just dream it, schedule it. Block time, build systems, stack small wins. Don't just talk about your goals, live them in your calendar, in your priorities, in your habits. Discipline is how you take your goals off the vision board and build them into your actual life. It's not about doing everything perfectly, it's about doing what matters most relentlessly. It's about moving when it's boring, when it's hard, when it's inconvenient, because the reward of that discipline is becoming the person who no longer breaks promises to themselves. Discipline doesn't just shape your schedule, it shapes your identity. When you act with discipline, you start becoming someone new. You don't just reach goals, you evolve. You build a version of you that is capable, reliable, and unshakable. And that version of you becomes unstoppable, not because of what you do once, but because of what you commit to every day, especially when it's difficult. The version of you that wins already exists. You just have to show up as them before the results arrive. Most people are waiting for the evidence before they show up with confidence. They're waiting for the success before they feel worthy of acting like they've already won. But the truth is, results don't create the identity creates the results. You don't become a champion by achieving the goal. You become a champion first in your mind, in your habits, in your language, in your posture, and in your discipline. Then the results follow. So if you want to change your life, you can't keep waiting to feel like the person who deserves more. You have to become them now, and everything else will begin to catch up. Your future self is not a mystery, it's a decision, it's not an unknown. It's a version of you that already exists in potential. And that version isn't built by luck, it's built by alignment. Align your actions with your highest vision. Align your standards with your deepest goals. Align your daily habits with the outcome you claim to want. Because the gap between you and your future isn't time, it's behavior. The moment you start showing up with the habits, the energy, and the mindset of your higher self, everything starts to shift. Most people sabotage their growth because they keep reinforcing the identity of who they used to be. They say things like, I've always been this way, or I'm not the type of person who, and those statements become a prison. If you keep arguing for your limitations, don't be surprised when they stay in place. But what happens when you start speaking from the voice of your future self? What happens when you walk into a room with the posture of the person who already accomplished it? You stop reacting and start creating. You stop hesitating and start deciding. You stop playing small and start owning your presence. This is the power of identity. You move differently when you believe differently. When you see yourself as powerful, you stop negotiating with excuses. When you see yourself as a leader, you stop shrinking in rooms that need your voice. When you see yourself as disciplined, you no longer argue with the alarm clock or wait for perfect conditions. You act in alignment with the belief, not the result, and eventually the result becomes undeniable. You can't become extraordinary while thinking and acting like the average version of yourself. You have to outgrow who you were. That means shedding the habits, environments, and beliefs that no longer serve the level you're stepping into. And yes, it'll feel uncomfortable. Growth always does. But discomfort is the down payment on transformation. The faster you step into the mindset of your higher self, the faster your life will rise to meet that frequency. It's not about faking it, it's about activating it. That version of you isn't a fantasy, it's the real you without the fear. It's the focused you without the distractions. It's the driven you without the doubt. And the more you show up as that version, the more you build the life that belongs to them. You want results? Mirror the behavior of the person who already has them. Think like them, speak like them, train like them, work like them, rest like them, plan like them. Then the results will no longer be a surprise, they'll be a reflection. You don't need to wait for permission to evolve. You don't need to wait for proof to believe. Your job is to move in advance of the evidence. That's what faith looks like. That's what leadership looks like. That's what personal power looks like. The version of you that wins does not wait to feel ready. They decide, they commit, they prepare, they practice, they persist. And because of that, they experience the outcome not as a lucky break, but as the natural result of how they've been living.